Bibles to John chapter 5. We'll be there in just a moment. We're going to look at verses 17 through 34 this morning. If you would go ahead and turn there. I want to thank all of you who are continuing to participate with us in our prayers. And I want to ask us to continue that again this week. We're praying through our sevens, that is 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And we're going to continue to pray for that same group. We're going to lift up our shepherds because it is a difficult time to be leaders. And so we want to be praying for Jerry and Sammy and their families. We also want to be lifting up our community. There are a lot of kids and a lot of things. We're getting ready to go back to school. A lot of parents are trying to figure out how to balance that out. We have a lot of challenges in our community, so we want to lift up our community. We also want to lift up our school system. I know we have our board members, our superintendents, staff, and faculty that are all trying to figure out how to make this year work, and they're putting a lot of time and effort. So please keep all of them in your prayers. So lift them up every day, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. This morning, we are going to be talking about recovery. And it's something we've talked about at length. Every single one of us need recovery. If you can hold up your fist and reach around and grab that fist and you feel a little pulse there, you need recovery. Because we all live in a world in which we have been impacted by darkness. At some point in time, we have all believed lies about ourselves, about the world around us, and about God. And as a result, we all need recovery. And anytime we are engaging in recovery, two ingredients that are absolutely necessary must be there. That's just described in Hebrews 11 and verse 6, where we are told that for without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. So as we look to recovery, what this is telling us is that in order to be successful, we have to believe that recovery is possible. If we don't believe it is possible, or we don't believe that it is something we need, then we will not pursue it. And recovery is hard work. It is not for the faint of heart. It requires a lot of commitment and a lot of dedication on our part. And so we have to believe it is possible. And then the second part of that, believing that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. This means that we have to believe that recovery is worth it. That the life we are being called to live is better than anything we could have imagined. We have to believe that, because if we don't, when it becomes difficult, when it becomes inconvenient, we will give up that process. So we have to believe that recovery is possible and that it is worth it. And so this morning we're going to look at John chapter 5, and we're going to listen to Jesus, and we're going to listen to how he responded to the world around him. And I think we're going to be honest with ourselves and realize we probably would not respond the same way. And that is going to tell us that we need recovery. And then we're going to listen to Jesus tell us from his own mouth that it is possible and that it is worth it. So we'll look at the first 16 verses. I'm not going to go through those. We've talked about those at length before. But what happens is Jesus comes into this town, and there is a man who's been laying there for a long time. And Jesus begins his conversation with this question, do you want to get better? And the man offers Jesus excuses. He never says he wants to get better. Instead, what he says is, I can't get better. Somebody always beats me into the pool. I can't get to the water. It's not my fault. He's playing the victim card. And in our culture, in our world, the victim card is very popular. And we encourage as a culture, as a society, for everyone to play that victim card. And it leaves us very much like this man sitting there laying outside the well. Well, we know the story. Jesus heals him anyway. Then he immediately runs into the Jewish leaders, and they question him for carrying his mat on the Sabbath. And he says, the one who healed me told me to carry my mat. And so they asked who it was, and he said, I don't know. And then a little short time later, Jesus finds this man, and he is pretending to be sick. And Jesus calls him to account on it and says, you've been healed. Stop sinning, or something worse is going to happen to you. See, the man really didn't want to get better. Because when he got better, there was automatically a responsibility in his life to live better. to go out and make a living for himself, to go out and work, and he didn't want to do that. It was much better for him to stay where he was. Now Jesus, as soon as the man gets called into this, he goes and tells the Jews, it was Jesus who healed me. And then we are told that the Jews began persecuting Jesus because he healed this man on the Sabbath. So I want you to put yourself in Jesus' place and imagine that you have performed this amazing miracle, that you have given this person a new lease on life, that you've restored them. They're now able to walk and to live fully like they haven't lived before. And that person goes back and rejects the healing and chooses to live sick, even though they're well. And then the religious leaders come and they criticize you. So how would you respond if you were in his position? How would you respond if you had done this great work and all you were met with was criticism? Well, I can tell you how most of the people in our world would respond. They get mad and say, well, forget you people. I'm not healing anybody else. I do this work and I heal somebody and you're going to be mad because I did it on the Sabbath day? I'm not doing any more of that for you. But I want you to listen to how Jesus responds. Look at verse 17. Jesus responded to them, my Father is still working and I am working also. You hear Jesus' thoughts? Did you hear what he said? Jesus said, I have to keep doing this. I'm compelled to do this because this is what my Father is doing. Therefore, this is what I have to be doing. How many times when we approach recovery do we think of it in that terms? How many times when we're living our life do we see it as this is what I have to do? I am compelled to do this. I can do nothing else. And if it offends people, I'm sorry. But this is what I have to do. Or how many times do we say, you know what? If I have time, I'll read my Bible today. If I have time, I'll pray a little more. If I have time and I can work it in my schedule, I'll make a phone call to someone. You see, it's easy for us to fall into recovery where it becomes if I'm able, if I have time, if. And Jesus' attitude is, I have to do this. I can't live any other way. I'm compelled. So if we don't feel compelled to embrace recovery, if we don't feel compelled to be in the Scriptures every moment, to be praying to God without ceasing, if we don't feel compelled, maybe it's time for us to be honest and ask ourselves why. Is it because we are horrible people? Are we just wretches? Or is it possible that we have all been impacted by darkness, and darkness has lied to us about who we are? Lied to us about the way life is supposed to be lived, and as a result we believe that. Maybe we need recovery. And I want you to listen to how the Jews respond. Verse 18, it tells us, this is why the Jews began trying all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal to God. You see, this is one of the tricks of darkness. This is one of the tools of deception that darkness will use. It will try to get us to separate Jesus from God. You see, they were mad that God wasn't working through them. They were upset that they weren't able to do what Jesus was doing. And rather than trying to change their life so they could do those things, they instead become angry and they want to separate Jesus from God and say, well, clearly you're not from God because you're working on the Sabbath and God wouldn't do that. You see, they're trying to separate Jesus from God. And we like to think, well, that was silly and that was arrogant on their part. But how many times do we do the same thing? How many times are we guilty of separating the good that we do in our life from God? How many times do we put in a good day of work? We work honestly. We work with integrity. How many times do we come home and say, I did that because God taught me to do that? I did that because God led me to do that. I did that because God loves me. How many times do we think about that? When we come home and we love our families and we serve our families, how many times do we think, I did that because God taught me to? Or do we separate those good works from God and we say, I did this because my parents taught me to do it. I did this because my grandparents taught me to do it. I did that because that's what our society has taught me to do. How many times do we stop and give credit to God and say that I was a good parent, I love my family, I served my family, I worked hard today, and I did it because that's what God taught me to do. And God taught me to do that not because He had to, but because He loves me. How many times do we think of it that way? What if that's the way we were created to see it? To see everything we do as good as coming from God. When we show compassion, when we show mercy, when we show love, then we think, I'm doing this because God taught me to do this, showed me how to do it, gave me the ability and the desire to do it. And He did that not because He has to, but because He loves me. See, that's how Jesus saw this. Look at verse 19. Jesus replied, truly I tell you, the Son is not able to do anything on His own, but only what He sees the Father do. For whatever the Father does, the Son likewise does these things. For the Father loves the Son and shows Him everything He is doing. And He will show Him greater works than these, so that you will be amazed. Hear what Jesus is saying? This is the way we were created to think. So ask yourself if at the end of the day, you realize all the good that you managed to do, from working hard, from working with integrity, from serving your family and loving your family, from all of those things, at the end of the day, do you realize every bit of that was because of God? And every bit of that He allowed you to do, that He taught you to do, was because He loved you. And if you don't see things that way, recognize that you were created to see them that way. And that this is why we need recovery. This is why. Because the way Jesus responded, when they tried to separate God from Him, He said, I can do nothing apart from my Father. There's no